Yo, what's up? Dr. Swole here, MD, pro physique athlete. Today I'll be sharing a full 3-day hypertrophy program based on the Dr. Swole split, which is a hybrid split between push-pull and the Arnold split. The split is actually set up for 4 days per week, but we're going to be running this in an ABA fashion, or alternating over 3 days across the week. I've gotten a lot of requests for this type of 3-day alternating fashion program, and I think the Dr. Swole split would be a good candidate for the job. Alright, as an overview of the split, it's basically divided into 2 main days. On day 1, you've got quads, calves, chest, and back, and on the second day, you have glutes and hamstrings, shoulders, and arms. This involves the push-pull split structure in your leg training. So, quads and calves are kind of like pushes of the legs, and then glutes and hamstrings are more like pulling type movements. And then the upper body follows an Arnold split type structure. So we put chest and back together and then shoulders and arms together. This setup is going to have some unique advantages for our ABA type alternating setup, and has a lot of advantages that I personally like. Now, this is going to be a low volume program designed for beginner athletes. It is actually written for 4 days per week, but will also work for the 3-day alternating setup. We'll start with a program walkthrough where I'll share everything you'll need to know to run the program yourself, including exercises, sets, and reps. Then we'll talk about the weekly layout, or how to distribute the workouts across your week. And finally, we'll talk about the pros and cons of this Dr. Swole split program. All right, let's do our program walkthrough. This is Dr. Swole's 3-day push-pull Arnold split hybrid program. It's set with low volumes, designed for a beginner athlete. We have day 1, day 2, day 3, and day 4. Note that I wrote this in the mind of having it run 3 days per week, but you could also run it 4 days per week as well. Here are the exercises, and here are the sets and reps. Down here are the total number of sets for each workout, so you have an idea of workout length. And here we have the total number of weekly sets for each muscle group. Note that this is sets per cycle, assuming that you're running this 4 days per week. So if you're running it 3 days per week, you will be performing less volume than this. This is pretty low volume, but if you're a beginner, I expect you will still progress well. Starting off with day 1, we kick it off with bench press for the chest, 3 sets, and we're using a top set back off method here. So work up to 1 top set of 5 to 8 reps, then take about 10% off the bar, and then do 2 more back off sets with 5 to 8 reps. Next, we have squats for the quads, 3 sets, and we're also using a top set back off method, 1 top set of 5 to 8 reps, followed by 2 back off sets of 5 to 8 reps. Next, we have leg press for the quads, 3 sets of 8 to 12. And you can superset these on the leg press machine with calf raises for the calves, 3 sets of 10 to 15. Then we have weighted chin-ups for the back, 3 sets of 6 to 10. And as a beginner, if you're not able to perform weighted chin-ups, you can just do them regular. Or if you need help, you can use an assisted chin-up machine or use bands to help you. Then we have single arm dumbbell rows also for the back, 3 sets of 8 to 12. Moving on to day 2, starting off, we have close grip bench press, which I count for chest and triceps, 3 sets, and we're using a top set back off method here. 1 top set of 6 to 10 reps, followed by 2 back off sets of 6 to 10 reps. Putting close grip bench press here as our tricep work actually helps to distribute some of your chest volume. It indirectly increases the frequency of our chest training. Then we have deadlifts for the glutes and hamstrings, and you're just going to warm up to 1 heavy set of 5 to 8 reps. Beginners typically don't need very much volume to actually progress through deadlift. Then we have Romanian deadlifts for the glutes and hamstrings, 3 sets of 6 to 10. Moving on to our arm training, we have hammer curls for the biceps, 3 sets of 8 to 12. Then we have cable press downs for the triceps, 3 sets of 8 to 12. Preacher curls for the biceps, 2 sets of 8 to 12. Then we have side delt work, so barbell upright rows, 3 sets of 6 to 10. Note that these also train the traps. And finally, dumbbell lateral raises for the side delts, 3 sets of 8 to 12. Moving on to day 3, we start off with bench press again for the chest, 3 sets. And we're using the same rep scheme here, top set back off method, so 1 top heavy set followed by 2 back off sets. Squats are also the same as day 1. Note that there's quite a bit of repetition in this program. As a beginner, I would rather you hit these main lifts more often so you can build your technique, and it will allow you to progress faster. If you're a true novice, you should be trying to add weight to your main lifts every workout. I also want to make sure that you're getting the most out of these bread and butter movements, especially if you're training with a lower frequency. Then we have leg extensions also for the quads, 4 sets of 8 to 12. Barbell rows for the back, 3 sets of 6 to 10. Then we have lat pull downs for the back, 3 sets of 10 to 15. And standing dumbbell calf raises for the calves, 3 sets of 8 to 12. Moving on to day 4, we start off with barbell overhead press, 3 sets, and we're also using a top set back off method, so 1 top heavy set of 5 to 8 reps, followed by 2 back off sets. Then we have deadlifts, and again, just 1 top heavy set. And leg curls for the hamstrings, 4 sets of 10 to 15. Notice that day 3 and day 4 are easier than the first 2 days since we have our isolation work for the legs instead of leg press and RDL. I have made up for this a little bit by doing an extra set on these movements. Then we have lying bicep curls, 3 sets of 6 to 10, and you're lying with your back flat on the bench. You can superset these on a bench with easy bar skull crushers for the triceps, 3 sets of 8 to 12. Following that, cable curls for the biceps, 2 sets of 10 to 15. Notice that each of the bicep movements here have a bit of a different characteristic. Hammer curls will hit your brachioradialis. Lying bicep curls get the long head more. Preacher curls allow you to focus a bit more on the short head, and cable curls give you a different tension curve using the cables. Then we have barbell upright rows for the side delts, 3 sets of 8 to 12. And finally, cable lateral raises also for the side delts, 3 sets of 10 to 15. Notice that our big core movements are repeated throughout the week, but we do switch up our accessory work. As a beginner, you totally could get away with just repeating the same 2 workouts. But I wanted to give you guys a bit more complexity here to make it more interesting, and also to accommodate you progressing as the months go on. Notice that day 2 and day 4 have more exercises than day 1 and day 3, and this is because you're training your shoulders and arms, which are smaller muscle groups and don't generate as much fatigue. I'll point out that the biceps and triceps are actually getting trained with every workout here. They get trained indirectly on your chest and back training, and then directly with your shoulder and arm training. Quads are also getting trained somewhat with every workout, directly with squats, and your other quad movements on day 1 and day 3, and also indirectly on deadlifts. Okay, now that you've seen the program, let's talk about the weekly setup. This program was set up for an alternating ABA type setup. So assume we're training Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you would do day 1 on Monday, rest, day 2, rest, day 3, rest, rest, and then you continue with the cycle, day 4, and then just pick up again, day 1, day 2, and so on. Note that I did design this program for 4 days per week as well, so you could do that if you are training 4 days per week, and I think it would work well for that. So if you're running it 4 days per week, I'd recommend this setup: day 1, rest, day 2, rest, day 3, day 4, and rest. And I put these 2 days together because they're slightly easier days. You'll notice this specifically from your leg training. Also, barbell overhead press has a bit less overlap with bench press than close grip bench press. All right, now let's talk about the pros and cons of this 3-day push-pull Arnold hybrid program. Starting off with the pros, you get a relatively higher frequency of the main lifts compared to my other programs. And I designed this for a beginner athlete. As a beginner, you really want to be hitting those main lifts more often to develop your technique, and you'll have more opportunities to add weight. Since you're not very experienced with these movements, if you only train them once per week, your technical adaptations would fall off by the time you train it again. You really want to get to the point where you're grooving into these movements really well, which will help a lot with strength development. And yes, I do recommend that beginners try and get strong with your squat, bench, and deadlift at first. I think strength and hypertrophy training will synergize very well in the beginner stage. You'll actually be able to develop both of these qualities simultaneously. Developing some strength early will also pay off in terms of hypertrophy later on. Since you'll be able to move more weight, you'll be able to generate more productive volume. That is, when you look at volume from the perspective of sets times reps times weight lifted. Next, in this split, quads, chest, and arms are trained every workout. This is taking advantage of our exercise selection here, as well as the split structure. I really like how this program combines some of your upper body and lower body work in every workout. Especially when you lump chest and back and shoulders and arms together, you get this effect where your arms and shoulders are being trained every workout, because they also get hit indirectly with your chest and back training. This really helps to mitigate our low frequencies if you're training 3 days per week. I typically recommend training each muscle group at least twice per week. The split does definitely help with that. If you're using an upper-lower structure, say, and you're running an ABA structure, you would have a relatively lower frequency for all muscle groups in general. Because on upper body days, you're really just training the upper body, and on lower body days, you're really just training the legs. Next, this program has excellent fatigue distribution, and this is something I really like about this combined split. Since you're training some of your upper body and lower body in each workout, it distributes the stress across the week very well. This can really help you give your best focus to all the sets across the whole week. Finally, with this push-pull Arnold hybrid, you get some priority for your accessory presses like overhead press and close grip bench press, which you can put at the beginning of your workouts on day 2 and day 4. Often with splits like upper lower or full body, your accessory pressing will typically come after your main horizontal press like bench press. So it's nice in this program that you get a bit of priority for those movements, and it also gives you a higher frequency of pressing. Pressing strength does depend quite a bit on technique and skill, so I think having this frequency will be a good thing. Finally, one other thing that I like about this program when you set it up for 3 days per week is that it gets around you having chest and shoulders back to back later in the week. Notice, as we showed before, if you ran this program 4 days per week, your day 3 and day 4 would come back to back, and that would mean some of your chest and shoulder training comes back to back. But if you're only training 3 days per week here, those days will be separated by rest days. I would recommend that you have at least a day of rest in between workouts. And I didn't mention this before, but you could also run this in an alternating 1 day on, 1 day off type setup. Going to the cons here, there really isn't much actually for this kind of setup. I think my hybrid split actually has very few weaknesses. One thing to point out here is that you have an overall lower frequency if you are training 3 days per week. Your back, hamstrings, and side delts are really only getting trained every other workout. If you're only training 3 days per week, that might mean they only get hit once that week. Now, even though the frequency may not matter so much when our volumes are low, I still like beginners to aim for a twice per week frequency because it allows you to get more practice developing your mind-muscle connection. It will allow you to accommodate more volume later on as you become more advanced and want more sets. but this is a split structure that I have used in the past on an alternating 3-day per week setup, and it would probably be better than a 3-day upper lower. I will be sharing this full program as an Excel file in my Facebook group, so if you haven't joined the group already, find the link in the description below. Join the group and you can download the program for free. If you want to bulk up and add some mass, check out my book, Dr. Swole's Bulking Manual, where I teach you everything you need to know to set up your diet properly for a successful lean bulk. Gaining fat too quickly was one of the mistakes I made early in training, and it's best if you can figure out your nutrition early. If you're training 3 days per week, check out this video where I go through a full body split, which I personally think is ideally set up for 3 days per week. The program uses a gray skull linear progression here, which is well set up for beginners. I do like the top set back off method here even for beginners because it's quite flexible and allows you to get in a little bit of auto regulation. But it's good for you to see some different programming structures to get some different perspectives.